So hello, everybody. Give it just like 10 more seconds for everybody to connect their audios. Really good seeing everyone. And thank you so much for everyone's patience. We're sorting out a couple of technical difficulties on our end, able to work it out. But we're going to go ahead and get started. But good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alan Guig, he, him, and I'm the Policy and Advocacy Associate with the Silicon Valley Council of Nonprofits, SVCN. Today is actually an extra special occasion because I get to welcome all of you to our second of 5 nonprofit candidate forums. In today's candidate forum, we'll have the opportunity to hear from both the candidates running for the City of San Jose's mayoral race. If able, we absolutely encourage all participants to have their cameras on to make it more personal as virtually possible. And just to ensure that, please make sure that your microphones are remained muted during the entirety of the forum. Now, while I go through today's guidelines, both of us and the candidates would absolutely love to learn who exactly is in the room with us. So please help us out by introducing yourselves in the chat with your name, pronouns, title, organization, and the native land that you reside on. While folks go ahead and do that, as continuing SVCN practice, I want to acknowledge that in San Jose, where I am today, I currently reside on the unceded lands of the Muwekma Ohlone tribe. Together, let us commit to educating ourselves and advocating for Indigenous peoples, communities, and those neglected and displaced by the US government and other colonial powers across the world. Since people are tuning in from different areas, I encourage you to learn more about what land you are living on by using the website that my colleague will share in the chat and share that information in your introduction. For accessibility purposes, we do understand that the automated closed captioning feature in Zoom is activated. So with this, you have the ability to move the captions around on your screen to a place more convenient for you. Or you can simply turn it off, turn off the closed captioning feature entirely if you prefer to not have it up. To do so, please reference the bar at the bottom of your Zoom as pictured on the slide. Click on the live transcript on the right-hand side, and then click Hide Subtitles. If you're having any tech or other troubles during the entirety of the session, please private message me or any of my SVCN colleagues directly in the chat. Now, finally getting into it, I love and absolutely more than overjoyed to introduce our moderator for the forum, LaMonica Peters, news reporter with KTVU, Fox 2 News, covering the South Bay. Her past work includes being seen on CNN, ABC News Live, CBS News, Spectrum News Network, and Live Now from Fox. She was selected as a Knights Digital Media Center Fellow by the UC Berkeley Graduate School of Journalism in 2011, and then began her career in journalism career shortly after at WXVT in Greensville, Mississippi. LaMonica earned a BA in Communication Studies from UCLA and a master's from CSU Los Angeles. Welcome, LaMonica. We are so excited to have you in this space, and the virtual floor is now yours.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you so much for having me be a part of this. I am new to the Bay Area. I've been here since May, but I've enjoyed getting to know the region, the people on the city council and such. And so I'm just glad to be able to be a part of this forum and finding out, what the candidates have to say as far as the nonprofit sector is concerned. So let's get started. I want to go down the ground rules first before we begin. The candidates will have up to 2 minutes for opening statements. The audience, we are asking you to please remain on mute while candidates are speaking. And during the program, we're going to be asking a series of both SVCN questions as well as audience pre-submitted questions. Candidates will have up to 2 minutes to answer each question, plus an optional 1 minute for each rebuttal if they choose to take it. If you will be taking a rebuttal, please pause for a moment to let our staff change the timer. For the convenience of the candidates as well as the audience tuning in, we will also be dropping the questions in the chat as they're asked. During the forum, we will also be including a lightning round of questions, which will be a mixture of fun topics and policy-related topics that will require a yes or no answer or a response of 1 sentence or less. After asking a few more questions, we'll finish up by having the candidates share the closing statements, which they will have 1 minute to do so. Throughout the forum, candidates will be speaking on a rotating basis. For example, Matt, then Cindy on one question, Cindy, then Matt on the next question, and so forth throughout today's forum. And one final note, please remember to be respectful to your fellow candidate and of the time limits allotted for each answer. And for your convenience, we will have a timer on the screen so you can visually see how much time you have to answer each question. Any questions? Okay. So with that being said, we're going to introduce our candidates. First, we have our current county supervisor, Cindy Chavez, and our current San Jose City Council member, Matt Mahan. I want to welcome you both. And again, just to reiterate, we have 2 minutes for each opening statement, and we're going to start with Cindy and then Matt afterwards.
Thank you all. Thank you very, very much for letting us join you today. I want to apologize for the technical difficulty. Alan was very kind to act like it was everybody. It was absolutely not. It was me. So just to let you know that the staff did a great job of getting us organized. You know, many of you I've known for a long time and have been in public service with you in all kinds of different ways. I thought I would just take a moment to say what I think is so compelling about the moment and what's so important about the mayor's race. All of you played a leadership role in getting our community vaccinated and tested, keeping our community going at its lowest point. And I think that what we all learned from that is what we were capable of if we were able to work together. And I think when egos were aside and we weren't worried about who was getting credit, but we were really focused on saving lives, keeping your organizations whole and together, we did tremendous things. What it reminded me of and made me think a lot more about is what can happen when the county and all of the cities are working collaboratively as if we lived in one community, which we do, and no single institution acting like an island. I want to be mayor of San Jose because having been on the San Jose City Council, having been on the Board of Supervisors, that I understand the importance of being able to knit together the different strengths of all of our organizations and doing a much better job of being able to, you know, to kind of to stretch every dollar that we have. And as you know, it's very finite. I've been endorsed by 9 members of the City Council. And the reason for that is some are on the left of me, some are on the right of me, but what they are all ready to do is get to work, roll up their sleeves and figure out how to collaborate together to make a better San Jose.
Thank you. Matt?
Thank you. Thanks for moderating, LaMonica. Good to be here with you, Supervisor Chavez, and thanks to SVCN for bringing us together. I'm looking forward to the conversation. I'm Matt Mahan, council member representing District 10 in South San Jose. And I'm running for mayor because I love San Jose. It gave me incredible opportunity as a working class kid commuting over here on a work study scholarship from Watsonville many, many years ago. And my wife and I are raising our 2 little kids here. We're very invested in the future of our city. And frankly, I am concerned about the direction we are heading in. I think that we need some more foundational change. I don't think we can continue doing what we've been doing because we're not getting the outcomes that we need on affordable housing, on homelessness, on public safety, on infrastructure, on just the overall look and feel of the city, on economic development. And while change could just be an overused buzzword, if you check out my website, mahanforsanjose.com, I think you'll see that in our policy positions, I lay out quite a few ways in which I think we could be doing things differently. To me, it's about delivering the outcomes that our community needs. And I think that's going to require us to really shift the paradigm and how we operate, starting with having a city hall that's more focused and measures our performance and is faster to learn and acknowledge when some of our programs and policies aren't getting us to the outcomes that we want. So that's really the premise of my campaign. I love San Jose. It gave me my shot in life, and I want to make sure it continues to be a place that offers opportunity and upward mobility to everyone. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We are going to start our question and answer period with our first question. And Matt, you will answer first. Nonprofits provide essential human services to communities that are hard to reach. Nonprofits and the city partnered intensely during the pandemic on food distribution, vaccines, eviction prevention, and outreach to those who are unhoused, just as a few examples. How important is it to you that the city have a meaningful and healthy partnership with nonprofits as stakeholders, co-creators, contractors, and organizations who are proximate to the community?
Yeah, thank you for the question. And I think that that relationship is absolutely vital. As we so often talk about at City Hall, we within government can't possibly have the diversity and depth of relationships, local community knowledge, cultural competency, and frankly, capacity to do what needs to be done. And so much of what actually happens at in implementation at the ground level in our neighborhoods is done through our nonprofit partners. And that's why both the city and the county are large grantors and provide contracts to nonprofits who in turn serve the community. So the relationship is absolutely vital. I've worked with the nonprofit sector in a very different capacity for many years. I built the first platform on top of Facebook that enabled nonprofits to use social media for the first time. So I have worked with hundreds of executive directors, hundreds of nonprofits and their staff to figure out how to be more effective at what they do. I think the one area where I've pushed and probably, you know, maybe has either been misinterpreted or sparked some controversy is that I think it's really important that at the city council level, we set very clear and objective measures of success, that we competitively bid our contracts, that we work harder to get more applicants in the pool, and that we're really thoughtful about how we evaluate impact and ensure that we are focusing on outcomes and solving problems, not getting complacent about managing them and doing things the way we always have. So that's the one kind of cultural shift I'm trying to bring a little more of.
Thank you. Cindy. Cindy, I think, can you guys hear?
No, Cindy, I think you're muted.
Thank you.
Oh, there we go.
Thank you so
Okay.
much. Goodness, man. Lucky I'm not in charge of anything important in the next hour. So first of all, let me just say that my experience with all of you has been that you are as focused on outcomes as the county is in this respect. When you are helping someone, you're helping someone get food or leave a violent relationship or recover from sexual assault or get housing. I mean, you see the importance of our outcomes because they are personal for you. And so what does that mean for us, you know, as elected officials? What it means is that we have to take the very best that you have to offer and transform that into excellent outcomes for the people we serve, and recognize that often we are learning while we're doing. Some examples, based on the leadership that all of you, role that you all played, we've reinvested in fighting domestic violence, fighting and addressing sexual assault, addressing human trafficking, thinking about our food systems in very different ways than we did before, and restructuring our mental health services. And so in terms of importance, I think the question really seeks out one very important issue, which is, do we as elected officials see all of you as partners? And the answer to that is absolutely. Why? Because you are an extension of us and a reflection of the community. And so the short answer is all of the areas I just talked about, you engaged with the county in restructuring the way we provide services, and allowed us to make bigger investments, in part because you're willing to track your work and look at outcomes. I think that partnership is important and rich and should stay as a priority for us.
Thank you, Cindy. I'm going to move on to question number 2. The city's Recovery Task Force, established in large part due to advocacy by the nonprofit Racial Equity Action Leadership Coalition, will shortly be issuing recommendations about investments to support members of our community most harmed by the pandemic. One of the task force committees is focusing on early education and childcare. What do you think the city's role should be in addressing the community's needs for affordable early education and childcare, especially given the tremendous workforce challenges we're seeing in that arena? And we will start with you, Cindy.
Thank you so much, LaMonica. You know, one of the most important bodies of work I think that we really got a chance to dive into has been childcare as part of the, not just the recovery, but while we were in the throes of COVID, many of you have been part of working with us really for years in trying to elevate and help people understand the importance of childcare. What we all saw with COVID is that COVID impacted women of color more than any other group of people. And that part of the reason we are not zooming back from the economy is that we have a lot of people who can't go back to work without that affordable childcare being available. And especially when schools were out, that was even more a dramatic impact. So what we've done, Sylvia Arenas, a member of the City Council, and myself jointly brought together the Children's Families Committee, and I forgot what the committee is on the city side, to take a dive into what could we be doing with the County Office of Education and our nonprofit partners and our community colleges to be able to do 4 things. Build out the needed facilities. Just as a reminder, we lost 350 facilities permanently during COVID, 350 in the county. Second is to make sure we're working with our community colleges to get folks certified so that we could get more childcare providers. Third, making sure that we could take the state money and apply it locally quickly for grants for home-based childcare and other kinds of facilities. And fourth, that we're making sure that the credentials are established in such a way that we will actually have quality childcare. So I think it's enormously important, and the city can look at resources, the city can look at permits, the city can look at making it easier to put childcare in public facilities as the county is doing now. I think there is a lot of opportunity for us to grow healthy, available childcare.
Thank you. Matt.
Thanks for the question. My wife and I both work full-time, more than full-time, and have 2 little kids. So childcare, early childhood education is extremely top of mind in our home on a daily basis. And we are very fortunate to have the financial means to have our children in a local preschool. And so I know firsthand what it is like. And this was a huge challenge for my family growing up. In fact, the library was our daycare center when I was a kid for many, many years. And so I think the city does have a responsibility to play a role here. Obviously, we can't do it alone. One of the really historic opportunities we have, and I think it dovetails with what Supervisor Chavez was speaking to, is the Community Stabilization Fund that's being formed as a part of Google's investment, but the vision is for other large private sector employers to invest in this fund as they grow in San Jose. And we're using that fund through one of the committees I serve on to examine amongst a range of investments, looking at jumpstarting the founding of many more childcare centers. And that's it does include real estate. It includes using our economic development team to find locations and potential real estate that can be purchased. It's helping operators with licensing and getting all those startup costs taken care of. It's speeding up tenant improvements in the planning department. It's all the pieces that have to come together, and will only come together if we are focused on it and prioritize it. But we need to massively expand the supply of childcare and early childhood programming. And that's going to ultimately be most sustainable if we can support a lot of local operators getting started and kind of bouncing back from what was lost during the pandemic.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to question number 3. This question was submitted by Hugo Garcia from San Jose Jazz. Jose's 2022 second quarter housing market report showing essential workers would need to make $98,840 to afford average rent for a 1-bedroom apartment in San Jose. What specific anti-displacement strategies will you support as mayor to ensure that nonprofit and other essential public service workers are not displaced and can continue to support be supported during this recovery? We'll start with Matt.
Yeah, thank you. I think there's no greater challenge locally than lack of housing supply, high housing costs, and the displacement and economic insecurity that's causing for far too many people in our community. So we have policies we're currently implementing, that some of which are kind of at the state level, some of which are local, being led by the city. We have some things we're examining, and then we have kind of the bigger picture. I want to just touch on each of them very quickly. So on the existing, as you all no doubt know, we have the Ellis Act. We have a local rent ordinance that caps rents on certain properties. We have just cause eviction ordinance, and now a rent registry. And so there's a lot that we've been doing and need to continue to invest in and protect and make sure it doesn't get rolled back. One of the things we are looking at through one of the committees I sit on are potential tenant preference policies as new affordable housing comes online. So we're doing the legal analysis to make sure that we don't run afoul of any sort of anti-discrimination laws, but basically the idea is to identify vulnerable populations, foster youth. We're actually moving forward a site in my district, public sector workers, different people who have recently been displaced, to get them prioritized as we build new affordable housing, either through our inclusionary ordinance or through sources of affordable housing such as Measure E locally at the city level. The broader picture, though, is that we've added 6 jobs for every home we've built. And so all of our policies and subsidies are great and critically important, but we also need to invest in our planning and building department. We have got to streamline reviews around CEQA, for example. We have got to make it easier to build housing, particularly near transit and in places like downtown.
Thank you, Matt. Cindy?
Thank you. And Hugo, this is probably the most important issue that we're going to have to address for the long-term economic viability and social mobility for our community. And let me make an observation. As many of you know, and because you all played a leadership role in it, we passed Measure A. And Measure A is intended to help us build along the affordability continuum. And that came into being. And the reason that was necessary is that the one type of money that the city was using to invest in affordable housing, or one source of funds, was redevelopment. And when cities lost redevelopment, that meant that there was no local fund that we could use. Now, through Measure A, we're going to end up building our 4,800 units of affordable housing that's built along the continuum. And that's very important to be able to build extremely low, very low income and moderate income housing. And there's a portion of that that's available for first-time home buyers. That all said, the most important thing we can do, and I think everybody on this call knows it, and I think you all played a leadership role in trying to help us do it, is make sure that we can build more affordable housing and all housing faster, and as fast as we can do it. Now, we have one strategy and that's using Measure A. We have another, which is focused on our partnership with the Valley Transportation Authority. VTA has about 200 acres that is being used for RFPs and RFQs so that we can build affordable housing right on transit lines. And that's very important because it's also an opportunity to give, for entry-level housing, is, when can bring down the cost somewhat. But there's more we can do, and we're going to have to do that in partnership with all of you.
Thank you. Matt, would you like to rebuttal at all?
No. Was that, sorry, did I have my hand up?
No, I'm just
Oh.
asking. Just asking. Thank you.
No.
Okay. At this point, we're going to be asking our lightning round questions. This is a mix of fun topics and policy-related topics again, and they're going to require a yes or no answer or a simple one sentence or less. So we're going to start with Matt. And Matt, what is your favorite food to eat?
Mexican food.
Okay. Thank you. Cindy?
Tacos.
All right. Matt, what was the last book you read?
Oh my gosh. I have just read about 5 books in a row on oak trees, believe it or not. I got really into trees recently.
Okay. Cindy?
Wow. Okay, Matt, well, let's talk. We have to talk about that.
We'll talk about acorns.
And mine was a book by Dr. Insel about mental health and the system that we're using, but I'm still in the middle of it. Yeah.
Okay. And back to Cindy, your favorite movie?
Of all time ever?
I didn't say that, but yeah, sure. Why not?
I would say The Princess Bride.
Okay. And Matt?
You know, I really liked this. Well, I'm gonna go with actually English Patient. That's one of my favorites.
Okay. Sounds good. Okay. Now, our community's food need dramatically increased during the pandemic. And at the same time, we learned there had been a pre-existing unmet food insecurity issue in our community. Yes or no is the answer. Does the city have a role in meeting the ongoing food needs in our city in coordination with the county?
Yes.
And I'm going to start with Matt. Okay.
Sorry.
And
Yes.
okay. Cindy?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. The City Council voted this year to add a charter amendment, including equity measures, now called Measure I, for the voters to consider on the November ballot. Yes or no, do you support Measure I? Cindy?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
Okay. Our city and county prevented a tsunami of evictions and homelessness over the past 2.5 years by working with nonprofits and the private sector, and together investing in and launching a cash assistance program that helped families and individuals pay rent. Yes or no, should the city continue to invest in these successful eviction prevention strategies? Matt?
Yes.
Cindy?
Yes.
Okay. Matt, back to the fun questions. Can you give us a fun fact about yourself?
Oh my goodness. After college, I spent a year in South America working with family farmers to build irrigation systems, mostly in Bolivia.
All right, Cindy?
Goodness, fun. We have like 49 days left in the campaign, so fun is not in my vocabulary right now. But you know what I would say is that my one fun fact is that my 21-year-old is playing football, and one of the things I was thinking about is all the hours I spent watching him, like over my life, and all the hours. I'll just say to all of you, you'll get back when your kids leave home, that all of a sudden you're like, what was I doing with all that time? So that's my fun fact, is I love watching my child.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, Cindy, your favorite quote?
I have two. One is it go forth and let your light so shine, so that others may see your light and honor God, which is in heaven. That's a really favorite of mine. And then the other is it's actually a quote by Cesar Chavez, and I never remember the whole thing, but the gist of it is that our ambition has to be big enough for our entire community, not just for ourselves.
All right, thank you. Matt, a favorite quote?
One I often come back to, and I have no idea who said it. It might have just been on a Hallmark card, is the one I read years ago is, what would you do if you knew you could not fail?
All right. Thank you. Well, the purpose of some of those questions were to allow us to get to know you a little better on a personal level. So I thank you both for participating in that. And we're going to move on to question number 4 with policy questions. Okay, this question was submitted by Frankie Insler at KTVU. Both of your platforms include plans to expand the police force. Given the movement to defund the police, as well as the violence enacted on marginalized communities by the police, are you open to alternative forms of community safety? If so, what are your proposals for doing so? Cindy.
Thank you for the question. I think what this really reflects is community safety and well-being broadly. And what does that mean? And, first, let me just say that we are the most understaffed police department of any large city in the country, and we absolutely need to add more police officers. They need to be well trained. They need to be screened to have the best, strengths, mental health, and skill set themselves. And so that's for certain, in my mind, a key component. But there are many other ways that we can make our community safer. And one is that we have already established and pushed forward multiple approaches to addressing people who have serious mental illness or mental illness. One is through Pacific Clinics and Alum Rock Counseling, where they will go out and do an intervention for young people who need services, I think if they're under the age of 19. Second is Trust is being launched. I hope, I don't know where we are in process, but I know we've been hiring staff. And as you know, that's a peer approach to folks who have mental health issues. MCAT, which is police officers working with mental health clinicians. And then PERT, which is also really in South County and Palo Alto, that is for really high need folks who can get responded to by both clinicians and police officers. But the other is we need to invest in after school programming, we need to invest in summer programming, and we really need to invest in teen activities. When young people need supervision and support, it'll both help them be better in school. It's also going to be helpful for us as it relates to public safety. And teens in particular need more support. And it's almost when we stop providing programming is as soon as someone, they're too old to be watched here or too old to be watched there, and we have to engage and attract them to that. So I think public safety needs to be thought of as community well-being and all the different tools we have to address it.
Thank you. Matt.
Thank you. And yes, I agree with that. When I came back from South America, I was a public school teacher out in Alum Rock, and I saw firsthand the real burden it put on young people and the families who were served by our school to not have consistent after-school programming. So I really made a point of keeping my classroom open, but that was far too insufficient for the needs of even just our school. And so I do think, we have to think about public safety holistically and over the long haul, which means everything from after school programming to better investment in inpatient care for addiction and mental illness and outpatient care, building on our success, the collaboration between the city and the county with the MCAT unit, many of the things that Supervisor Chavez referenced. I will add, though, to go back to the point about the police department, we have such an understaffed department, just 11 officers for every 10,000 residents, when most large cities have 20, 30, easily 2 to 3 times that number, that it actually can make us less effective at policing. We have officers who are working too many overtime shifts, who are tired. We don't have the capacity to do the level of community policing that we ought to do, with officers out walking around the neighborhood, building relationships, getting to know people. And so I don't think that this is just a binary question of how many officers we should have. I think it's about the quality of our policing and what it looks like. And certainly an officer with a gun should not be the first responder to every call for help. I'm a big fan of differentiating our response, but it is important that we have a well-staffed, well-trained, and accountable department. And we still have work to do there.
Okay. Cindy, would you like to respond at all, or is there any rebuttal to what Matt said?
No, not a rebuttal. I mean,
Okay.
I think, no, it's not a
Okay.
rebuttal. It would just be and another thing, but not a rebuttal. No.
Okay, thank you. Let's move along to question number 5. This question was submitted by Kama Fletcher. Forgive me if I'm not saying that correctly, at Downtown Streets Team. How can the mayor's office help fight the stigma and harmful misperceptions about people experiencing homelessness? For example, like the not in my backyard attitudes that in turn have led to opposition to much needed housing. We'll start with you, Matt.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think one of the unique things the mayor can do is draw attention to issues and be out there with leveraging social media, the attention of the press to help tell stories. As a council member, I've had the opportunity to spend a lot of time in our encampments. It's the #1 source of complaints in our district and probably everywhere in the city. And I've made a real effort to go out to the encampments personally, talk to our unhoused residents, talk to the neighbors, try to get the neighbors and the unhoused neighbors to talk to one another. We, in my year and a half or so on the council, I can't tell you how many community meetings I've been in related to affordable housing, transitional housing, and now an RV safe parking site, all in my district, and have been on the front lines of having those tough conversations, sometimes with over 100 people in a room yelling at me because they don't, the immediate reaction is to not want the solution to be in their neighborhood. And so I think we have a responsibility in government to also meet the community halfway and show them that we're acting in good faith. I've argued for local preference policies that help transition unhoused residents in the immediate neighborhood into housing first. Any neighborhood that takes on a site ought to feel and be better off holistically for taking on that investment. I've argued for and actually we have now very consistently community steering committees that are advisory committees who work with the operators of sites. And so I think it's really that hand-to-hand combat of being out in the community, having those conversations, and not sugarcoating things for the community, and really being, directly and honestly answering their fears and their questions, and many of which are frankly valid.
Okay. Cindy?
I think this is a very, it's a really important question, and it is one that is very complex. And the complexity of it is that the homeless community, especially because it's so large, has really made people in the house community more fearful and more, just more fearful. And I think, to be frank with you, I think one of the challenges that we have is that it is easier to make people afraid than it is to build these bridges that we need to build. And so one thing I would say is that I think we want to make sure that that homeless advocates, the homeless, our housed community, government, and our nonprofits are really working together to really address, what people's concerns are. And as an example, I think we know that we have some subset of the homeless population that have serious mental health issues. And those serious mental health issues require a high level of services to get them stabilized. And until they get stabilized, that they're out in the community, frankly, not just frightening people who are housed, but the unhoused as well. And so part of it is that we need to be super clear and honest and forthcoming about how we have conversations with the public, and as a community that really cares about the unhoused, what is it that we need to do to make sure that we're addressing those needs in very real ways. I just want to give you one example. As we clear an area and people get services, we need to make sure those areas don't get filled back up with people who are homeless, because then the community can't see that we're actually moving the bar.
Okay, thank you. Matt, do you have any rebuttal?
No.
Thank you. Okay, moving right along, we'll go to the next question. Question number 6. This question was submitted by Linda Nguyen at Vietnamese American Roundtable and Mimi Hernandez from Prosperity Lab. As you might be aware, since June 2020, the local nonprofit community has been deeply engaged in anti-racism work, both within their organizations and in tackling the effects of systemic racism in our community. For example, over 150 nonprofits have signed the Racial Equity Pledge. How do you plan to ensure equity in city policies, processes, and entities, and address historical inequities in the city? Cindy, we'll start with you.
Thank you. I think that as a county supervisor, I've taken many actions in this area. I co-chair the Health Equity Task Force. Supervisor Cortese and I not only did a declaration, but we're really denoting that racism is a health issue and then integrating that into the county's health policy. I played a leadership role in both expanding GARE at the county and also creating the Office of Immigrant Relations, the Office of Disability Affairs, and a number of other actions that we've taken, including creating an equity pledge that we could get elected officials to sign across all of our cities, so that we were being more robust in how we analyze policies and how we are honest about when those policies dramatically impact one community over another. All that said, I think that the work that the Real Coalition has been doing to really dig deep into these conversations, I would say is a lot more advanced than many of our institutions, because I think what you all are wrestling with is the very real, consistent issues relative to systemic racism, even within the nonprofits. And so I think one thing that I would say is that from a city perspective, I think, really supporting Zulma in the areas that she is really working with all of you on. And some of that is going to need to be invested in, particularly as it relates to training and communication, because how we talk about these issues is as important that we are talking about them, and then being able to change the policies in a way that actually impacts the future. And all the policies I just talked about, I am so sorry, that's Buddy. All the policies I just talked about won't mean much if we don't change the way we approach our public policy.
Okay. Matt, you are up.
Thank you. I like that idea of a pledge across all cities in the county. I think that's a really good idea. We need more of that kind of equitable distribution across all cities. A couple of thoughts, and I think the short answer is I think we really need to follow the lead of our newly formed Office of Racial Equity, led by Zulma Maciel, and she and her team. Now that the team's there, she's been building it over the last roughly 2 years. Are really highlighting the importance of baking equity in everything we do. And so I think that office is going to be a real driver for us. I, in an attempt to supplement their work, advocated and helped get into the last budget a data equity analyst position, because I think it's really important, and our city manager, Jennifer McGuire, and I really are aligned on this and have been working on it together. I think it's important that we move from being able to, yes, have the data as to where the gaps are, who we're not serving well, who we're missing, where they're disparate and unfair and unjust outcomes, to managing toward better and more equitable outcomes. And so, understanding and baselining service delivery, moving away from being so reliant on complaint-based service response, which tends to bias toward those who have the most time and means and technological connectivity and so forth, toward more proactive assessment of need. We know from recent studies, we have the data, we know we have a lack of tree canopy in East Side. We know our parks, on average, our lowest scoring parks are on the East Side. Now we need to manage our resources and investments to go get to equitable outcomes. And I think we're in a position to do that, but we need to push harder and faster on that.
Thank you. Okay. Cindy, would you like to rebut?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move into our final question forum. This question was submitted by Jen Masuda at UI Chi. The silver wave is coming. We need a built city that is friendly to the aging population with affordable housing, walkability, options for transportation, and pet friendly. Additionally, many older adults will need additional services, including the kind of services currently provided by the nonprofit organizations, such as day programming, memory care, digital access healthcare, and senior nutrition. What is your plan to address the needs of older adults in San Jose? And we will start with Matt.
Thanks. This is another question. All of these questions obviously have a personal dimension. We just went through this process with my father, who passed away last year, and we talked about lack of childcare at one end of life, and then lack of supportive services and elder care at the other end here. And we had a really hard time finding the placement and services that he needed. So representing Almaden and South San Jose, where the so-called silver tsunami is already here, it's an issue we talk about and think about a lot. I work closely with our Almaden Senior Association, which is the largest one in the city. Areas I've been focused on at the city level, there's so much more beyond the city, but first and foremost, again, goes back to land use, permitting, encouraging the kind of investment in housing and memory care facilities and getting those places built out. In part, we have a lot of school districts that have excess land that is being sold off to build single family homes. I want to strategically push to build more of the facilities around childcare and elder care and other needs that we have for that public, quasi-public land. Connectivity is another big one. We have now stocked our libraries with Wi-Fi hotspots that can be checked out for, I believe it's 90 days at a time. That was a real need that we've heard. Another that I hear consistently that I think we can have an impact on working with VTA and the private sector is around mobility, which is a huge barrier. And that became one of the first big barriers for my dad. We can't just rely on our existing services. We're going to need to beef up the more individualized point-to-point shuttle services and look at private sector innovation. So I'm out of time.
Thank you, Matt. I appreciate that. Cindy.
Yes, thank you for the question. And, obviously, maybe it's not so obvious, for years we've been seeing the silver tsunami come. And, I've been to many, many conferences where people are talking about it, and now it's here. And now we're in a situation where we need to act, and relatively quickly. One is, as many of you know, all of our cities, I think in the county, and I think we were the first county to have every city become part of the age-friendly network that was really started by, I think it was the WHO. And what's exciting about that is that it means that each city is supposed to be committing to the built environment being a safe and secure place for seniors. And I think that that is something that we have to be thinking about very differently, which is to mean that every action that we take relative to the built environment has to have an all-inclusive component to it, all-inclusive. And so as an example of that, the county has invested millions of dollars in all-inclusive playgrounds, because as we know, that means that's a place that a child or an adult or anybody in one family, everybody can enjoy and spend time together, irrespective of what their needs are, their physical and in some cases sensory needs are. So I think we should keep doing that. I think one of the things we have to remember is that digital inclusion is going to be very important, and the city of San Jose and the county and all of us need to be focused on making sure that digital inclusion is a high priority so folks aren't as isolated. And then lastly, I just want to pick up on a point that Matt raised, and that is that we have got to move more quickly on supporting the development of institutions and services that can be available for folks as they need them, because there are so many more people who need them. We're going to need a lot more of them than maybe we even expected.
Thank you. Matt, would you like to rebut at all?
No.
Okay. Well, I want to thank both of you for answering those questions as well as you did. That was our last question. And so to end, I will have both of you give a closing statement, and I'm going to start with you, Matt.
Thank you. Well, I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. I do want to plug my website one more time, Mahan for sanjose.com. I'll direct my comments to the network here. I appreciate the work that you all do in our community. I know we have a lot to learn from each other. And if I am your next mayor in San Jose, I look forward to working closely with you to identify where we are not doing everything in our power within government to facilitate your work and have the impact that I know we all want to have. We live in a world of trade-offs and constrained resources. And my goal is to make sure that we're working together to have the maximum impact for our community with the limited public dollars that we have. And I appreciate the conversation today. It was great to hear Supervisor Chavez's thoughts and depth of experience on so many of these issues, and look forward to working with all of you in the years ahead.
Thank you. Cindy, you have 1 minute.
Great, thank you. Thank you all very much for hanging in with us for so long. And again, I apologize for joining late. You know, the thing I just want to say is that I think that this is a time in local government where we need champions. And what that means is you all have been champions for some of the most underserved people in our community. We need to, whoever the next mayor is really lift you up and make you a priority in terms of how we get our work done. I have tried to do that as a member of the Board of Supervisors, and previous to that, as a member of the San Jose City Council. So many of you have had a chance to work with because you've brought very challenging problems to either the county or the city, and we dug in and we figured out how to address them. What faces us in the future is going to be extremely challenging. Our ability to work closely together, to be responsive to each other, is really the only way we're going to move San Jose forward. I hope to have your support. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I'm going to turn it over to Alan. Thank you both.
All right, and thank you so much to our candidates for being here today and sharing your goals and vision for the San Jose mayoral role, and to our amazing moderator, LaMonica, for being absolutely wonderful today. Thank you for joining us, and it's a very important forum. Before we part ways, our support for you all does not end here by any means. So as a nonprofit association, we want to make sure that we're accessible to you all as best as possible. So please go ahead and reference the information listed on this slide to best inform you all on how to contact us so we can best support you. Your feedback and suggestions really help us improve how we can support the sector. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us today, and hope to see you at our upcoming forums.